This is the High School Crossfire. Welcome back.
Recycling programs should focus more on incentivizing participation than penalizing non-compliers. But what's the Preston Miracle Lakeside College Zira? Both negative. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
In order to receive an incentive, assessment needs to be done. True or false?
Pardon?
In order to receive an incentive, assessment needs to be done. True or false?
True.
Thank you. Assessment is done by people, which is manpower. True or false?
True.
Thank you. Do we all need to participate in recycling?
Pardon?
Do we all need to participate in recycling?
Very well.
Thank you. Meaning we are all liable to receive incentives, right?
Yes.
Thank you. And these incentives are provided by manpower to the people, yes?
Yes.
And you said penalizing needs a lot of manpower, correct?
Penalizing needs a lot of administrative structure.
Thank you, but you have agreed that giving incentives to every single person in the country that need manpower. We move on. True or false? Most incentives are finance-based.
Yes, they're finance-based.
You said we are basing on a low-developing country like Uganda, correct?
Yes.
And low-developing countries need money. True or false?
They need and they have.
Penalties increase revenue. True or false?
Pardon?
Penalties increase government revenue. True or false?
Not really.
Thank you. I ask again, incentives are costly, are they not? For
Even
the government,
penalties are costly.
NLDC needs money to operate. I ask you again, is it true?
Pardon?
Thank you. Germany is a leading recycler. Do you believe this?
No.
Thank you. Your beliefs are different from mine, but we move on. Your first speaker talked about satisfaction causing repeat actions. Is this true?
Yes.
When I do something culturally unacceptable, I may be satisfied. Is this true?
In case if it's
Thank
recycling.
you. So if I do not recycle and I avoid the penalty, will I feel bad?
If you don't recycle.
If I don't recycle and I'm not penalized for it, will I feel bad?
You will recycle because there
No,
are rewards.
if I do not recycle and I'm not penalized for it, will I feel bad?
You will recycle because there are rewards.
Thank you. You can have the seat. Ladies and gentlemen, penalizing provides funds to the government. Incentives need funds as we approved. Incentives are not sustainable. Penalties are inclusive and far-reaching, and incentives are selective. Why do we say so, ladies and gentlemen? My team has showed you that for incentives to be done, you need to have assessment of this. They are saying incentives don't need funds. Firstly, you need to have assessment of people. You need to collect information about people who you're going to incentivize. You need to give people incentives. Incentives are usually rewards. You're going to say, because this company has been the best recycler in this area, we shall give them a lorry. But how sustainable can this be for a country, which is an LDC, as they said, which has not enough money to operate already on basics? They said Ugandans are lacking money. So if we lack money as Ugandans, where will we get the money from to give incentives to people? We talked about penalties, ladies and gentlemen. Penalties are fishing. No one is above the law. No one is above the law. So why do we advocate for penalties, ladies and gentlemen? Penalties, a burnt child dreads fire. Germany is the leading recycler in the world. Why is this? They have strict laws. What do these laws do? These laws encourage compliance to recycling procedure. And what has been the result of this? Low levels of pollution, high levels of recycling. Since a burnt child dreads fire, people do not like to lose what they have. Because of this, people will be forced to recycle because they don't want to lose the little they have already. And this will cause high levels of recycling because of penalizing non-compliance in the country. Article 245 of the Constitution, which works in conjunction with Section 76 and 77 of the NEMA Act, says the environment must be preserved and conserved through recycling by manufacturers. Manufacturers are entitled to recycle. They must recycle. What does this mean? This is a law which is saying that manufacturers must recycle. The UN believes that the best way to fix the situation is the implementation of policies and legislation to improve waste management and to hold polluters accountable. This is according to the UNDP.org. What is this showing you? We need to penalize non-compliance in order for us to have sustainable levels of recycling. According to Sustainable Development Goal number 12, we need sustainable consumption. How do we do this? We put laws. No one is above the law. The law will show you that you need to recycle. The fear factor comes in because the law, no one is above the law, and because of this, we need to recycle. Because I'd like to rest my case.
How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
Do you know what recycling means?
Yes, I do.
Is it true that we need to protect the environment from waste?
Yes, by penalizing people who pollute the environment.
Is it true that Uganda has weak administrative structures?
Depends on what you look at.
Is it true that penalties require enforcement solely by government?
So do incentives, but yes.
Yes. Is it true that administrative structures require more money than incentives?
It is not true.
It's true. Okay, thank you. Is it true that incentives can be outsourced?
It is true.
Thank you. Is it true that countries like Sweden have fought the problem of poor waste management through incentives?
To some extent, but we are saying we
Thank
should
you.
focus more on
Is it true
penalizing
that
and compliance.
incentives attract more people in participating in waste management?
It is not true.
Okay. Is it true that there are already penalties in error districts like Uganda on waste management, but they are not working?
Which is why we should focus more on them.
Yes. Do you know the saying which says that you can hit two birds with one stone?
Come again.
Do you know the saying which says that you can hit two birds with one stone?
I am familiar with it.
Thank you. Is it true that incentives are going to provide jobs to the unemployed through the rewards which are given to them?
Come again.
Is it true that incentives are beneficial to the unemployed?
If you mean the assessment officers, then yes, but incentives themselves cannot find
okay,
jobs.
thank you. Is it true that penalties are going to put people in fear?
No, they're going to make people law-abiding
But
citizens.
your speaker said fear. Is it true that this fear will stop these people from buying these materials?
No, it won't.
Okay. Did you state Rwanda as your case study?
One of them, but yes.
Yes, thank you. Is it true that Rwanda doesn't recycle?
It's not true.
Okay, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from Team Affirmative what they have told us. The last question I've just asked him that did you state Rwanda as your case study? And he said yes. I asked him that is it true that Rwanda doesn't recycle? And said that's not true. He's not aware of Rwanda. Rwanda doesn't recycle. Rwanda just burns and hence causing more pollution. I asked him that does Uganda have weak administrative structure? He agreed and said yes. So if Uganda has weak administrative structure, how are the penalties going to help? How are the penalties going to be efficient? I asked him that the penalties require enforcement solely by government. He said yes, and yet the government already has a weak administrative structure. So how are these penalties going to solely be implemented? I asked him that I asked him that, do you believe that incentives can be outsourced? He said yes. So if incentives can be outsourced, which means they do not require solely the government, they do not only require the funding from the government. So which means if these incentives are outsourced, which means these incentives are more efficient than the penalties which only require the government structure, which are going to need the government which is already having a weak structure. I asked him that is it true that countries like Sweden afford the problem of poor waste management through incentives? He agreed that yes. So countries like Sweden, where we put our case study, have fought waste management, using incentives. So, and also asked him that is it true that incentives can attract more people in participating in waste management? He agreed yes. And asked him that did your speakers state about fear? He said yes. So speakers stated about fear, and for us and the incentives can attract more people in waste management. So how can fear attract people in waste management? Yet incentives here, there are rewards. Rest my case.
Yeah, to start with, I want to begin by appreciating both teams, and I want to welcome you back from such a spirited round. On another day, resolutions like these ones that have words like incentivizing, that have words like penalties, these are words that could also be contextualized. Meaning at one point of time, Team Affirmative, you could contextualize incentives to mean something. Because yes, it's very true, incentives, because most of what you are looking at the financial world. But there's even more, even from the financial world, that we are looking at incentives. Maybe you could also look at incentives, for example, where maybe the government is giving tax holidays, or maybe even reducing the taxes that are being paid by the companies that are maybe now accepting the plastics for recycling and so whatsoever. But of course, now I don't mean that what you have is wrong. No. Because even the financial world that you talked about is also part of the incentives. But also on another day, like to build more on your strategy for the team case, you could actually maybe limit or squirrel one to the openness to what you're talking about. Maybe if you're talking about incentives, this is what we are talking about. But I'll take you to be a best case that now all of you are able to still contextualize what you're talking about. Now, what are some of the outstanding arguments that we had in this resolution? Now, in this debate, we're having a team affirmative that was actually looking at incentivizing, and then vis-a-vis the team negative that was looking at why don't we actually come up and then we use the penalties. So, things to note in such a resolution. One, it is always important to listen to the arguments of your opponents. Yes, it's true that you should actually come to debate here, maybe yes, when you have made your research, but always listen. If you feel your opponents are ever bring out an argument that feel it is really killing your own case, always come and make response to that. One, There's an argument that, for example, comes from team affirmative to team negative. This was the argument of administrative constraints. They are okay, at the end of the day, we are now all maybe focusing on low developed countries. For them, they are looking at now, in most cases, if you find out that these low developed countries, these are countries that are now having constraints in administrative, where we are going to have like maybe invasion and then evading of the laws, as we have already seen it this side and also the other side. So, yes, I really appreciate the fact that Team Negative tried to make a response to that, though on another day you need to make a better response. Like if you're saying, because now for them, where they are saying that no, for us we are looking at the law and no one is above the law. Whether this is in place or that is in place, if the law is providing that you're not meant to do this and you go against it, we are going to, because now for them they were looking at fines, closure of businesses, seizure of property, and imprisonment. The other day you could also go ahead and make response like, what more do you have to do with no one is above the law?
The resolution we had before us today did not require you people to come up and tell us how bad pollution is, to quantify pollution. You get that? Now, what we wanted was for you to prove to us, are the incentives going to be the best? Should we focus more on incentives? Should we focus more on penalizing? Now, we have a team affirmative that comes up and tells us that, you know what, for a population, you should not instill fear. You come up from your first speaker and you begin with an argument of psychology, that at the end of the day, people maybe respond more to rewards than to punishments. Now, that is a good argument, personally, for me, that because first speaker, you say that the rest of the speakers are going to compound on it and explain it. I was waiting for the rest of the speakers to actually compound on it, because personally, I do believe it is a very good argument for you. Now, however, I do not penalize you on that. Now, Team Negative, you come up and you tell us that, you know what, let us focus on what? On penalizing these people. Fear is the best way. Now, we have two arguments that you both raise, two arguments that both teams find difficulty in answering, and one team totally does not answer. Team Affirmative raises a question as to implementation. You give a very good argument, Team Negative, when you talk about penalizing people that are not complying. However, you telling us that no one is above the law, I won't say it's a very good rebuttal. It is a rebuttal. However, that is not going to guarantee us that people will actually do what? Comply. What do I mean? Because they come up and they tell you that actually there are various laws currently in place. However, they are not being what? Adhered to. So what is the guarantee that these penalties that you give, people will adhere to them? You come up with a response of, you know what, at the end of the day, no one is above the law, people will adhere to them. That is a response. However, it is not response enough. Now, Team Affirmative, there is a question as to sustainability that is questioned by Team Negative. They ask you from their second, third, and fourth, they ask you, how are you going to sustain funding? Now, that is a very different question from with the response to give that at the end of the day, it is not only government that is paying these people, that is an answer as to cost. You understand that. However, because there was also an argument of cost, now their question as to sustainability, the fact that in your first speech, you compound this and you assure us that this is an LDC that does not have funds, the fact that you characterize an LDC in that way. Now they come up and they tell you that at the end of the day, what guarantee do you have that when we take away the rewards, when there are no rewards at all, will people keep on recycling or they will not keep on recycling? Now that is a question that you totally do not give an answer to, from the first to their last speaker.
My judgment is solely on the comparison of the two things. Each of the individual solutions each team was tasked to prove and represent. The affirmative team was tasked to defend incentives. The negative team was tasked to defend penalties. The first affirmative speaker established a standard in this debate, which was he's going to look at enforcement, participation, and cost. The negative team bought this standard and also added sustainability to that. So I felt like on the part of enforcement, the affirmative team had a stronger argument than the negative team as far as what is more enforceable, right? Um, and on the argument of participation, now these are arguments that I feel both teams had plausible arguments. So on participation, the affirmative team tells us that when we put incentives, we will attract people because they also benefit and they will be willing to participate. And psychology says that if you benefit from something, most likely you will do it again. Negative team says that because there's fear for consequences and facing penalties, you must participate. And as such, they also say that because it's a law, it obliges everyone to follow it, as compared to incentives which only will benefit those that participate so as to earn the incentives. So I take that both arguments at that level are plausible. On the argument of cost, however, I felt like the affirmative team states that it is much more expensive to enforce laws. But the negative team, to me, argues convincingly that for a debate that is characterized such as the affirmative team has characterized in low developing nations, if you're to provide incentives that you have not defined and agree in your fourth speech that these incentives can manifest as financial incentives, it is more costly for a developing nation to provide incentives as compared to simply enforcing laws. So for me, the negative team then wins on the argument of cost. Then on the argument of sustainability, I have no answer from the affirmative team concerning sustainability, an argument that of course has been brought by the negative team. So when you compound all arguments, I felt like the negative team proved to be stronger, so my judgment does not differ from the previous judgments by other judges. I gave both of you 15 for style, both of you 23 for content. I differed in strategy, and that is because of the winning on the arguments by the negative team. Gave 23 to the affirmative team and 25 to the negative team. In totality, 61 to the affirmative team and 63 to the negative team. It is a unanimous decision that the negative team wins this debate.